Kintsugi Heroes brings you the following River Murray flood recovery story, jointly funded by the Commonwealth and South Australian governments under the Disaster Recovery Funding Arrangements. To find out more about this podcast, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. The 2022 River Murray floods in South Australia were caused by record water inflows from the Murray-Darling Basin due to heavy upstream rainfall. The slowly rising floodwaters inundated homes, businesses and farmland, causing widespread displacement, infrastructure damage and agricultural losses. The disaster significantly impacted local economies, communities and led to the region's long-term recovery. In this special limited series of Kintsugi Heroes, John Millam sits down with members of the Riverlands community and gives them space to share their experiences of their personal adversity and community resilience. It's only through connection and empathy that there can be a path to recovery. Today, we welcome Tony Siviour, the General Manager of the Renmark Paringa Council. Tony shares his impactful journey managing the 2022 floods in Renmark, South Australia. Renmark, being the first town impacted by these floods, faced unique challenges due to its island-like geography and extensive levee bank system. Tony, a long-time Riverlander, led a remarkable effort to safeguard the community, from overseeing rapid levee reinforcements to coordinating emergency responses. Tony and his team worked tirelessly to minimise the flood's impact. Join us as we delve into the lessons learned and the resilience shown during this extraordinary event.
So, ladies and gentlemen, listeners to Kintsugi Heroes, welcome again to another session of the floods in the Riverland in South Australia. And normally we're talking about people who are residents and people who are in the area and have a particular challenge from being there. Today, we're very privileged to have a discussion with a man who is responsible for the area and certainly part of it. And today we're talking about with the general manager of the Renmark Paringa Council. Is that I got that right? And Tony Siviour. I hope I said that right too, Tony.
Siviour.
Siviour. Thank you, mate.
Yep.
So really, in many ways, given the floods that we're talking about in 2022, that were so impactful right along the whole from the Murray course from Renmark through to Murray Bridge. Your area in particular, it was a long, slow, and even to this day, huge impact on the people and place that you look after. So, mate, have you, do you still have nightmares about it?
Well, look, you're right, John. It was a pretty stressful time. And I suppose just to set the scene for your listeners, Renmark is the first township that is impacted in South Australia. So in terms of prep work, we had 2 weeks less than other communities. And the other challenging thing is that the township of Renmark is actually an island. You can access the township of Renmark from 4 bridges. Well, it's actually 3 at the moment, but we are surrounded by a 38-kilometre levee bank system. So that levee bank system is across 350 private landowners. So that in itself was challenging. So, in terms of having to do work on our levee system, we first had to work out how we could get the consent of 350 people.
My goodness, mate. Local council, that sounds like a Herculean effort. Put it back to 2022. First of all, you live in the area, obviously, and are you a long-term resident of Riverland? I know you've been out and about with your local government journey from here to there. Did you start in the Riverland? Is that where you grew up?
I did. I was born in Barmera, which is just down the road. grew up in Barmera, but to get a CEO position in local government, I moved out of the region, went over to the West Coast and spent 6 years over there.
Wow.
But always had my eye on Renmark as a community that I was really interested to come back and work at. So, yeah, I'm a Riverlander, and I've been out and come back.
How long have you been back?
I've been back 13 years, actually.
Right.
And I think in that time, we have done some work. We've attempted to get our levee network remediated right back until 2010, but we haven't been able to secure funding. But the funding obviously did flow during 2022.
Yeah, there's there's nothing like a big wet reminder of how necessary things are sometimes. Yeah.
That's exactly right, and credit to the government of the day, their support for local government emergency services was fantastic, and we knew very early on that we were going to have to play a big role in this response. I think early October, I was actually in Mooloolaba with my family, having a good time, good part of the world, but also monitoring the river flows. And once I got back, it was very clear that we had something rather large on our hands, and we initiated our emergency incident management team straight away. I do remember a conversation or a meeting with the SES CEO and the now CEO of Department of Environment and Water in early October, where they came down to Renmark, and we sat in my office for felt like an hour, but it's probably 30 seconds where we actually didn't say anything other than looked at each other, and I knew that we certainly had a situation on our hands.
Wow. I find, sorry, I kind of smiled earlier because holidaying in Mooloolaba, some of the water that hit you there might have ended up at your feet in Renmark several months later. Right.
Possibly, yeah. And that's what we found in early October once we'd initiated our emergency incident management team, is that every week we were seeing massive amounts of rainfall falling in the Murray-Darling Basin, and river flow projections were increasing. And where it started off as potentially being a low flood or a high river event, it's certainly very quickly became a significant flood event that meant that we had to do a lot of work in a very short space of time.
Now, it's interesting because the profile of this flood is, fairly unusual. So the folks tell me, in that, it was predicted as coming, and then it was like a slow event that suddenly surprised everybody. Right. And I find that really interesting that they sort of still managed to find surprise in something that sort of trickled up and slowly sort of came down the river.
Yeah, look, I think we're blessed in the fact that we had 6 weeks to prepare, roughly. And I'm not sure it was a surprise to the community. Maybe it was a surprise in the end of how big the event was. Because it just kept increasing with every rainfall event. And when waters from different rivers, meet up and then projections change, that's probably what, the community may have found challenging. Well, I think they definitely did from some of the feedback that we got. And early on, John, some of the most difficult things that we faced was managing the media. Not the local media. The local media were fantastic, and they worked with us in ensuring the community had really good information about the flood. But there was some sensational media happening that we found difficult to manage. We had to centralise our communications. We also had, our mayor had only just been elected, so he essentially walked straight into the second biggest flood in 152 years. So very, very challenging for him. He was fantastic, took it all in his stride. I think he did something in excess of 50 interviews over a couple of months. But, hugely challenging situation for him. Yeah.
So it's interesting from that perspective, and I think it'd be good to explore that a bit further in a minute. But it's interesting because you mentioned this was second only to the 1956 flood. So in terms of impact and reach. The Renmark area, the entire Riverland area is full of water people, right? Like it's sort of rural Australia, but the river runs through them, doesn't it? And in many ways, irrigated agriculture, tourism, the life on the river itself with the boating side of things. That's such an important part of the the culture, the lifestyle, and the mindset of the people. How do you think when the river comes up and sort of bites them almost, right? Is there an understanding that that's part of their choices or part of what they're living, or is there surprise and pain about it? How does that go over?
It's a really good question, John. Look, I think it's probably a bit of both. Obviously, it is the lifeblood of our community, but we did have some very challenging situations where power was turned off to large vineyards with very short notice. So that was extremely challenging. Yeah. Some of the work that we did where we did have a spare minute was actually to go and speak to the people who were there in 1956.
Yeah.
And when I say there in 1956, like they were working on banks, they were old enough that they were involved in that. I actually had a few just drive around to my house and come and talk to me about it, which was fantastic because
I love that.
Yeah. They were probably the people that had their head around it the most. And, a lot of them said to me, Tony, you're doing a great job. You have this under control. Your levee banks are looking magnificent. I think we carted in excess of 150,000 tonnes of clay in about 6 weeks. Wow. So, our levee banks were rock solid. We had a fantastic monitoring system in place as well, because we knew that if we got it wrong in one spot, we potentially, from some of the modelling we'd seen, we could have lost up to 600 houses. So, but look, I mean, people like living near water. That's across Australia. You'll see that people like living near water, and that's the spots where they want to be.
And of course, the riverboats are iconic. They're part of Australian folklore almost, right? So,
yeah, definitely, we have a very strong houseboat industry in Renmark as well, which was another issue that we had to deal with. Like our moorings were not adequate, and we quickly realised we had a local commercial operator who said, "Look, this is what I'm going to do with my boats. I'm willing to coordinate it for council." Because we could have lost 150 houseboats as well if we didn't get that right.
Yeah, sounds very complicated. Would you guys, you are a river council? Would you, with levees and so on, they're uniquely kind of challenging in terms of management and so on. And of course, when they go wrong, people point the finger directly. How do you feel about that challenge? Is that something you knew was going to be a part, because you're a local yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, look, it was really, really difficult, to be honest, because one thing led to another. I think it was the 23rd of October, we had our single biggest rainfall event in the history of Renmark.
Wow.
Right when we were attempting to work with clay on levee banks. So you couldn't have scripted that any worse, John, to be honest.
Wow.
But once we hit our mojo with the levee banks, then the next issue that we were faced with was with our stormwater. So we had 29 stormwater outlets that we had to essentially seal up so that the water wouldn't get in via them, and that was challenging. And also we then had to deploy large pumping systems, in the event that we had a rainfall event, because we would have flooded from within.
Yeah.
So
wow.
there's all these challenges that you face.
Yeah.
Getting close to the peak, which was on Boxing Day, the pressure on the bunds that were in the stormwater systems were immense, and some of them just couldn't handle it. So, examples, we had to just go and pour concrete in the end of the stormwater pipes, because it's the only way we could get them to seal. Those sort of challenges you don't appreciate until you're in the moment.
Yeah. This was such an active management process. What did you learn about your team?
What I learned was there were some people handled the situation really well, some people didn't. Some people really stood up when it was needed. And that's, you just don't know until you're in that situation. But we set some rules very early on, because we met every day from the 13th of October to the 13th of January. We met every day.
Wow.
Because things were changing so quickly. We only met for an hour every day because we couldn't sit there and procrastinate and go through every single issue that we had every day. It'd be, what's the biggest issue we're dealing with today? And we're just in there, we're cracking in and making decisions and getting on with it. So that definitely worked for us as an emergency incident management team. I think probably one of my biggest learnings was to step away during the event. So because it was so intense, a few of us struggled, including myself. And I should have stepped away, but I didn't. I didn't want to step away. Like, I wanted to be there every day. But that's definitely a learning for me, is that in the middle of an event, you need downtime. Because the event was 12 weeks and it was non-stop. You didn't get a day off from it. So that was definitely a big learning.
In some ways, as we're seeing in floods at the moment and across the country, we know that this can be a life and death event, and of course, people's livelihoods and people's home and memories are impacted. How does that sit with you? Like, you were making decisions that were directly impacting people's sense of well-being, and even more than that, their future.
Yeah, it was huge, John, and I took it very seriously. I suppose it was an honour to be given the opportunity, and I think that's how some of my emergency team felt. It was an honour to be placed in that situation. But certainly was happy when the peak had gone and it was starting to go down. But obviously we were left with a pretty large cleanup as well.
Yeah, massive. Was it too much? There's certain jobs that people shouldn't be doing by themselves, right? You shouldn't be left without support. There was so much asked of you and your colleagues. Was that fair?
No, I don't think so. We had good support as well. I think, in the situations where, people needed to clock off, if we'd done that regularly, I think we certainly had it under control. We were probably a little bit different in that most things we wanted to handle ourselves and then reach out for help. Some of the challenging stuff was having to work out the solution, because we were the first council in South Australia. We did go over to Mildura and see what was happening over there, but we were sort of trailblazing some of the stuff and then passing it down the line. So some of that was a bit challenging, that, like the stormwater in particular was challenging, but we, made sure that in particular Manum was aware of that, because we knew that they would face that same issue that we had.
How was your personal impact? Did you feel safe behind the levees?
Look, my house is actually out in the horticultural area, so but that didn't make any difference to my decision making. Look, I mean, for me to go to lunch during the flood event sometimes take up to an hour and a half, because a lot of people would bail me up and say, look, I live on this street, you need to do something. The great thing for us was we had excellent data. So we had a digital elevation model that could show us which levees we needed to work on first. But that's difficult to explain to the community. I need you down there working on my levee, but that was challenging. yeah, that was certainly challenging.
So your place, because you've got a vineyard, is that where you? Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a vineyard, John, anymore. Like, I liked growing the grapes to make wine, but I wasn't making any money, John. So it's actually gone now.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So so you have a story of the wine industry where the little bloke is struggling, right? So
yeah,
we'll have to do that in the next project, right? So
maybe.
So so it was interesting because some of the decisions about looking after some people are on the other side of levees and things. So you at least weren't accused of not being in the middle of it, right, yourself.
No. And I mean, now, there was not one house impacted behind our formal levee network, which is something we're obviously pretty proud of.
Yeah, fab. Cleanup is like there's a special hell that flood leaves you. How'd you guys face that, right? It's like after all of that work, the heroic efforts to keep the water at bay, but there's still the damage and cleanup to do, which just seems to be overwhelming. How did you guys manage, to get that, to bring things back online and to keep people serviced and happy?
Look, again, challenging. Communication was the key. Letting the community know what would come back on first and things like that. We still haven't finished all of our recovery efforts. We still have a major bridge that we're building right now. So look, it's just thanking the community, I suppose, for being patient, because these works are substantial. The work that we did on our town wharf was in excess of 10 million.
Wow.
The bridge we're building at the moment is around 8 million as well. So these are serious pieces of infrastructure that, it's really disappointing that they were impacted so much, but it's an opportunity for us to rebuild them and build them better.
Yeah.
Which the government's been good in supporting us, so that next time we do have a flood event, and we will have another flood, this infrastructure is a lot more rigid and is ready, essentially ready for this type of event.
Yeah, well, you came back to the Riverland, so you chose to be in the middle of this stuff. One thing it's going to flood. What do you love about this place?
Oh, there's heaps of things, John. Like, I mean, as much as the river has just taught us a really big lesson, it's a great place to be. I spent the weekend on the river, even though it was 43 here yesterday. We had one of our marquee events, the Riverland Dinghy Derby, was on the weekend. So drags in thousands of people from all over Australia, and it's a fantastic event. So, the river lifestyle, you can't beat it, really. It's probably the thing I like the most. Growing grapes, not so much, but not anymore.
Well, you once liked it, but now you've learned, right? Yeah. What do you love about, what did you learn and love, maybe or maybe not, about your community?
I suppose the first thing I probably learnt was that people were not ready for a flood of this magnitude.
Yeah, wow.
They were probably scareder than I expected. Other than the people that I spoke to from 1956, who were very comfortable with what was happening. I think the community were absolutely fantastic once they realised that we had the wheels in motion, and were confident that we were going to, get this stuff in order for when the peak came. So, as with anything, it takes a while for things to start moving. But once they saw the trucks moving, and there was up to 200 truck movements a day, they could see that the levees are getting rebuilt. They were looking absolutely magnificent. Probably the turning point, I think, of the flood event was when we deployed the defence cell product on the Renmark riverfront, because I had a lot of people come to me and say, yeah, that's great, you're doing all these levees, but you're doing nothing on the riverfront, and it's going to overtop. The data that we had was that it was touch and go whether it would, but we said to government we need something there in case projections are out or there's more rain or something like that. So as it was, that defence cell, it barely got touched, but it was a fantastic opportunity for us to involve Costa Group and their Pacific Islander program. So they actually came in and did all the installation work for the defence cell, and it just was, I think, was a turning point where the community could see that we essentially had the infrastructure in place.
Defence cell, just tell the folks at home what that looks like.
Yeah, so it's an army-style product. It's sort of a caged square with mesh in it, and then essentially you just put red dirt in it and just compound it really, really hard, and it just creates a really strong barrier.
Fantastic. Some innovation as well, and of course the project you led, right? Yeah, that you had to innovate and and then set up, basically, as you mentioned, blaze a trail for other communities. Was that like the sense of passing that on? Did they learn from that? Was that a successful process?
Look, I think so. For some communities, it was relevant. For others, probably not so much. And the main community that I would hope assisted was Manum. So the CEO of Mid-Murray Council, Ben Scales, and myself spent a lot of time on the phone, just talking through, what are you seeing? What should I be doing to prepare? How are you getting on? All this sort of stuff. Because they were a good 4 or 5 weeks behind us. So look, I hope it was of some assistance.
Is this was this work, or was this more than work?
No, this is this is work, John. Yeah, that's definitely work, but very, very satisfying. Yeah.
Right. And what would you like the community to know going forward, right? So now we've got you've been through this exercise, so you've got the organisation strands, your particular team and council. You've got your community. What would you like both those different sections to know going forward?
Look, I think for the community, we'd like them to know that we've learned a lot. We have a lot of good learnings and systems in place. We are still working with the government on understanding how we can have a levee system that's easier to manage, in that there's 350 landowners in our community, and that is not easy. I mean, I must admit that the community of the people who own that land were great. We essentially wrote to them and said, look, we're going to do whatever we want to save the community and your property. And obviously we had powers. We use Section 298 of the Local Government Act, but we don't want to have to do that in future. Like there should be a better way of doing it. So that is still a work in progress.
Yeah. So going forward, you'll be, is that, a collective, a group meeting, right? Regular sort of updates. Is that how you think it might roll out?
So at the moment, it sits with Department of Environment and Water, but we are a party to those conversations. Yeah. And then, like, from our community's perspective, that's some of the things that we would like to see. How can this be easier to manage in the future? And who pays for it? Who pays for the maintenance of our levee network when there's not a flood event?
Yeah, good question. No, it's interesting. Living there it's almost a cost of living there, isn't it?
Well, we don't think it should be. So there's a levee network across the whole the river system, and that's essentially the answers that we want to get.
Yeah. The plan going forward, how will you keep the plan active, spontaneous, fresh?
Yeah, look, like I said, we're not driving it, but there's certainly, collectively interest between the three Riverland councils. So we work together as a G3. So we'll keep the pressure on to make sure that there are outcomes from the money that's been allocated.
And what do you like when you see reports just recently, of floods and so on, does that cause you a little shiver?
I wouldn't say a shiver, John. Probably a point of reflection, definitely. There's always going to be floods, and that's why we are keen to get these answers on whose responsibility is it in the future. So, yeah, not a shiver, mate. No.
So you're painting a picture of the impervious, in control council executive, mate, with all the answers, which I love, right? Which is like full of confidence and care.
Yeah, I'm not saying we got all the answers, John, but look, I think hopefully through that flood event, we've proven to the community that we can step up and protect the community from an event like that.
And it was clear the council, a lot fell to the council. That was it. So, are you proud of what you did?
Yeah. Yep. Look, I think our elected membership and we won a couple of awards for some of the work that we did. So, I think some of the staff are definitely proud of what they achieved.
Which brings us back to what you mentioned earlier, right? Like, where on earth did that sort of adverse reporting come from? Right? What was the grounds?
Oh, look, it was very early on, John, to be honest, and it was just, we were hit with some questions like, you've got legal structures on your levee banks. We'd say like where, so we can respond. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, if you're not going to respond, we'll just run the story. Just things like that. Oh, there's a hole in this levee bank, water's coming through. We're like, okay, where would that be? That's all right, we'll just run the story.
Yeah,
that was not helpful. But what was helpful was going to our local ABC, who ran twice a week, I think it was, or 3 times a week. I was on every morning for 2 days a week with a regular update. That was helpful, really helpful. And a lot, people in the community came to me and said, "I listened to hear what you've got to say." The other stuff was, it was in the advertiser, and it's got an overlay of an area flood in Renmark. It's happened to be our waterfront waterfront housing area, which has always got water in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's how you sell papers, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I have no idea, right? So, but what I am interested in is how that impacts. It's like, the community came together, right, in a tough time, right? And to me, that's the story. Is that how you saw it?
Absolutely, yeah. And that was, like I said there early on, we had to centralise our communications. That was paramount. We had to get in front of any negativity and just talk facts, and that's essentially what we did. We had a team that formed up the messages, and the messages were delivered by either myself or the mayor.
Yeah.
And people would say, "Oh, thank you. Yep, like we can understand what where we're at or what we're talking about." And as we're starting to talk about stormwater, then we'd say, "This is what we're looking to do with stormwater." So.
Do you think a community grows from these kind of things?
I do. I certainly do. And some of the people that were carting all of the material in just loved it, absolutely loved it. Everyone's waving to the people carting the material in. Probably we knew early on that the community were really wanted to get behind this effort. Obviously, their major town is on the line. But we're blessed with a lot of very skilled earth moving contractors in Renmark. We've probably got more earth moving contractors than most of the communities around us. So early on, my director, Tarek Wolf, brought all the earth moving contractors in to one room, and they essentially started working through the solution on, how to coordinate this effort. We didn't tender this work. We didn't have time to tender this work. So this is probably in excess of $5 million worth of earth moving, which was done by essentially all the contractors giving us their rates, their availability, and then we sent letters of offer. And we did all that within 5 days. $5 million worth of work for us to, tender that through our normal procurement processes. It would have taken us 3 to 4 months. So it probably says something about using Section 298, to be honest. Like it's, you get stuff done.
It might sound attractive to some people right now. So getting stuff, getting those big projects through quickly. So you talk quite a bit about, the challenges going forward organisationally, right? What do you think the community has to do to be prepared for the future, right? To be healthy into the future? How do you go on with life and have priorities and then understand that there'll be another flood at some point?
Look, I suppose it's probably keeping yourself informed, John. It's, giving council feedback on whether, we think we have it under control, or, us providing information about what this next body of work with the government is going to look like. So I think as with anything, it's about being informed, having all the information at your fingertips.
Because water is a big issue going forward, so, and this is part of it, water management and so on, irrigated agriculture and the tourism on the river. How do you bring all that together and still be aware that, you have to be able to respond to future challenges in floods and stuff?
It's a difficult one, John. Yeah, look, like you point out, we're probably about to go into a drought now. So, we've come out second biggest flood in 152 years, and now we go into a drought. It's just you're living in a challenging community as much as it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's the ups and downs are very high.
Yeah, it's interesting. All the Riverland people I talk to, they love their Riverland, right? So despite how hard it makes them work sometimes.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
So going forward, what's your future?
Me personally?
Yeah, are you ready for the next one? Are you going to wait and smash the next drought?
The next drought or the next flood?
Next drought, next flood.
Yeah. Look, I do feel we're far better prepared for a future flood event. The bridge that we're constructing at the moment, the bridge before it was actually a bit of an impediment to flow, and we've removed that. Our wharf is designed for 100 years, so we'll be far better prepared for the next flood event. Drought is another thing. Drought's far more difficult to prepare for.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, lastly, right? 2 years on, and this is a key time because there are still people that certainly downstream as well who are still cleaning up and dealing with stuff. How's that going in your community? Are people back to where they want to be yet?
Look, I think we're getting close, John. Other than our bridge on 21st Street, the majority of our infrastructure is back up and running. If you came down, you probably wouldn't notice that we'd been in a flood event. So give us another, where are we? Probably 4 months, and we're sort of back to business as usual. probably not so for my fellow friends down at Manham who, I really feel for that they, suffered a lot more damage than we did. And hopefully they can get that all under control as soon as possible.
And it's not just the physical scars or impacts. It's the psychological ones. People go through a lot of effort. There's the work done to mitigate the issue and then the relief afterwards. How do you think that cleanup is going? Is the community, feeling safer, feeling back to normal?
I hope so, John. We were dealing with more than just the aftermath of a flood, unfortunately. We have our issues with our wine grape sector and our pest-free area status that we're trying very desperately to hold on to coming into a dry period. So, there's a lot happening in the community, and obviously the mental health of everyone is very important to council.
Do you think council has a role in a community mental health world?
Yeah, we do. We certainly do, and we've run some mental health programs and some mental health first aid programs as well. And we pride ourselves on some of the community events that we support and run ourselves that hopefully give people the opportunity to forget about what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
It sounds like you guys are really steeling yourself for the job ahead to get to keep that community vibrant and functioning. And I take my hat off to the work you've done already to get through what is an incredible event, and on the heels of quite a number of challenges, COVID and droughts. And so congratulations, mate, on looking after your town and your people, and good work on keeping the river waters tamed a little bit at least.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. It's not me. It's a team event. Like, everyone was involved. Like, there was a huge team behind me, so I certainly don't take the credit for it. And like I said, my mayor was amazing as well. First couple of weeks into the job, and he's been interviewed by Sky News about a very difficult situation. So it was certainly a team effort.
Yeah, congratulations to you and the team, mate, and all the best. Thank you so much for talking to Kintsugi Heroes, the Beyond the Deluge, the Riverland floods, and mate, so much insight in all of that. And I wish you well, right, with all the typical Australian challenges you have ahead of you. Cheers, mate.
No worries, John. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Riverland Recovery Stories. If anything in this conversation has had a triggering effect, please seek support and reach out to someone who can help keep you safe. If you found this conversation interesting or helpful, please share it with your friends, family, and colleagues so we can help more people with their recovery from natural disasters. To find out more about Kintsugi Heroes and our other projects, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. Thank you to our production team, Kintsugi Heroes volunteers, and most importantly, the Riverland community for sharing their lived experience.